Come on, Eileen. We expected so much more from you. I couldn't resist. It's just too easy. It's right there in front of me.
Right there.
Right?
I know.
So we're going to review this movie, Eileen. It is out in theaters today. A little indie, a sexy, stylish little indie. Alonso will tell you about it.
I have my own ideas.
Kind ideas.
You can never tell anyone. Do you understand? Promise me.
It's from the director of Lady Macbeth, which I'm embarrassed to say I still haven't seen. I need to catch up on Lady Macbeth. Although I'm a little less driven to see Lady Macbeth now that I've seen his follow-up, but we'll get to that. Anyway, so Thomasin McKenzie, so great in, what was the film with Ben Foster?
Leave No Trace.
Leave No Trace.
Leave No Trace.
Plays Eileen, and she is a young woman who works in a state-run mental hospital for boys. Her father is a retired police officer and raging alcoholic, and she takes care of him. They are both reeling from the death of Eileen's mother and dealing with it in different ways. And one day at the hospital, which is a pretty grim place, in comes a glamorous new psychiatrist, fresh from Harvard, blonde Anne Hathaway. And Eileen's head is turned by this woman of the world who actually treats her like a peer and pays some attention to her. And the two of them embark onto a friendship, but we can already tell from the get-go that things are not as they seem, and this isn't going to go well.
I don't think it's a mental hospital. I think it's a juvenile detention center. I think it's a jail.
It's a jail, but I think it's also I think it's where they send you when you're also have mental issues, because there's a lot of doctors and psychiatrists floating around. I don't know. It is an institution. It is a grim one. We are told in the very first scene that Eileen is got issues. So she is basically the smoking gun of this movie. She is the Chekhov's gun, if you will. We are told very soon, this woman has real deep-seated problems going on, and so then the whole rest of the movie is just kind of waiting for Eileen to go off, basically. And then when it happens, it's in circumstances that don't really work, but it's a spoiler, so we're not going to really talk about the final third of the film. But for you said that's where the movie derailed, and I was really never on board in the first place. Give me a character who I discover has, is complicated or broken or whatever. But if you give me that from the get-go, there's nowhere for her to go, and there's nowhere for the movie to go. And so for me, it never really went anywhere.
So I was into it for a long time, just based purely on the style.
Oh,
right?
Sure, yeah.
It has Ari Wegner shot it, who's the DP on Power of the Dog, for example.
Oh, yeah,
and William Oldroyd, who directed Lady Macbeth, which of course, put Florence Pugh on the map. And so I felt like for a long time, he has a way with this young actress and with this character's inherent contradictions, because as you say, we're told from the get-go that Eileen is kind of a mess, but she's so mousy and so placid on the exterior that there's some tension as far as that contradiction. When is she going to go off, as you say?
Sure.
And she's living with her alcoholic father, played by Shea Whigham. And there's some kind of rich sense of place in the 60s, bleak,
it is the 60s. I meant
snowy, 60s Massachusetts, bleak, snowy New England. And so it just feels dreary. And the accents are a little scattered, but some of the supporting players,
she's nailing it.
She's got that shit on lockdown. Oh my God. And she's a bright spot, because that's part of it too. Is everyone is so miserable, and there's no filter. And so when Anne Hathaway sweeps in with her Marilyn Monroe platinum bob, she's so exciting and so glamorous. How could you not fall for her? Although, to us, there's clearly something a little dangerous about her.
Yes.
For Eileen, who is young and naive, she's early 20s, and she's trapped in this town and in this job.
She's
it's
dazzled.
exciting, and she's our conduit. Yeah, she's totally dazzled. It's funny that she's here as well. This reminded me a lot of Last Night in Soho, in the same way where we have 60s mod chic style, and Thomasin McKenzie getting sucked into a glamorous world by a dangerous blonde. It's kind of similar in that way, although the aesthetics are totally different. This is so stylishly grimy, so intentionally low key, whereas of course Last Night in Soho is Edgar Wright, carousel, run amok, whatever. So I was into it for a while because I feel like it presents itself as sexy, toxic, lesbian, romance, right? Like something's going to go on there.
Yeah.
And like, ooh, what's it going to be? And how scandalous will it be in this town and in this place in America, right? And what it ends up becoming, though, is something really different and not nearly as interesting. And I'm like, oh, is that what we're doing here? Like it's appealingly dark, I guess, in theory, but in practice, in like the nuts and bolts of how it goes down, I was disappointed in that.
It's one of those movies where it's based on a novel I haven't read, and I'm thinking, did this work on the page? Is this the kind of thing that you can get away with?
Moshfegh, who wrote the script. Yeah, it's based on a novel. Go ahead.
Is this a thing that you can get away with in a book that then on screen suddenly becomes absurd or like too much?
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I wonder if it was the kind of thing where, oh, you read the novel and it's totally of a piece and it flows and it fits in with the rest of the mood, whereas here it's this jarring, like, oh, we're doing this now, kind of thing. I agree with you that the tone of this movie is terrific. Like, I loved looking at it. I loved the performances. I loved the just concrete sky, bleak winter of it all, the cigarettes, both the glamour and just the grossness of like just the ashes everywhere and bleh, you know, there's a lot of puke in this movie, you know. You know, that stuff is all handled well, but because we're told so much up front about who this character is, we know it's in no way a surprise that things go, you know, akimbo. And then when it does go akimbo, it does it in such a way that it's like, it's such a leap that I don't think the movie quite nails that landing.
Yeah, and that score tells us a lot too. I think it's aiming for like a Hitchcockian kind of Bernard Herrmann score in terms of its portent, you know, and its bleakness. But if you live someplace bleak like New England in the 1960s or now, you can stay warm on those snowy, chilly nights with our friends at Coffee Brothers. Their holiday blend is especially delicious. We've enjoyed all the coffees that they've sent us. They're so good. Like, I keep running out. I keep needing to get more. But the holiday blend in particular is warm and toasty on these chilly winter nights. It got cocoa in it and wine and berries, and it's just like rich and sweet and delicious. We've got a deal with them. Our code is breakfast15. Take 15% off of your Coffee Brothers order. If you order at least $50 worth of coffee, your shipping is free. They make great gifts. I recommend it highly. I know, Alonso, you have enjoyed it as well.
Absolutely.
So that would make Eileen's life, her sad life, a little happier if she has something cozy in her mug. So what is your number then?
I mean, you know, there's such craft here that I can't completely dismiss this movie. But I'm going to say like a 5.5. I don't think it works, but I think there's a lot of the pieces are good. They just don't fit together. Yeah.
Yeah. I forgot to mention too, the titles make it look like a movie that came out in the 60s. Like, it's shot digitally and all of that, but like it's meant to technically evoke a film from like a 60s noir.
Yeah,
like
kind of a Ross Hunter sort of, like one of the Lana Turner movies of that period. Yeah. What about you?
I'll say 6.8. 6.8 because I was with it for a long time, and it's stylish, intense, and sexy until it isn't. So Eileen's in theaters today. Let us know if you guys see it.